Well, hello, and welcome to Little State Big Voices with myself, Shahida, and my fabulous co host, Tracy. How are you?
Hey y'all, I am good. My
Why did.
throat is a little still Kathleen Turner, but you know what? I'm getting there.
Oh, no, I don't hear it. You were sick this week?
Yeah, I was, but I like the huskiness though. That gives my voice a little
I
spice.
do. Whenever I have a cold, I'm rolling with it. I'm rolling with it if my throat is on fire. But today we do have a special guest. I'm really excited. I spoke to him a little bit earlier, and he's going to talk on issues that we really never think about when we think of, fighting the power, liberation, and all that. And so Tracy's going to give that intro, and then we will bring him in a minute.
Yes, indeed. So I'm proud to say that I know this person personally on a personal level for decades now, and he is the president and CEO of Soul Touching Experiences, LLC. This is an organization aimed at bringing a perspective of issues for access, inclusion, and empowerment, which affect him as well as others and other people with disabilities like himself. Even people without disabilities are affected by the work that he does. So, to achieve this multicultural cross disability education and outreach effort, he collaborates and he conducts trainings with the purpose of strengthening the efforts to provide services and information for people with disabilities and different abilities. The issues he tackles are wide ranging from immigration, criminal justice reform, healthcare, and environmental justice. That's just to name a few of the things. Paralleling with his policy and social justice work, he's a multi talented artist who, along with Leroy Moore and Rob Temple, founded Crip Hop Nation, which is an international collection of artists with disabilities. Crip Hop Nation is currently celebrating 14 years and actually recently earned an Emmy Award. Yes, y'all, we interviewing the Emmy Award winning folks up and through this podcast, okay? And so, after the success of the title song from the Netflix documentary Paralympic Games, their score, The Rising Phoenix, was critical to that soundtrack and really brought just another level to the documentary itself. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, my brother, Mr. Keith Jones.
Hello, hello,
Hello.
hello.
Hi, Keith. Hi, Keith.
Hey, uh-oh. I wish I could walk, but I'm not. I'm old. How y'all doing? Thank you so much for having
Of
Okay, thanks for
course. So I
me.
just gave you a rousing intro, which you probably didn't hear, but that three little paragraphs don't even really encompass everything that you bring to the table. I was like, our listeners need to know this man. They need to know your music. They need to know your platform, all of that. So we're just so glad to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it because, um, nobody has to ask you to talk, so it's always an honor to be a guest. So just don't kick me out too quick. Just don't kick
We won't. We won't.
We,
Listen,
we won't. We want to hear all about what you're doing because, like I was saying earlier, you're fighting a fight that we don't often think about. We know it's very important. And one of the things we don't see is Black men at the forefront of that. So we, want you to talk about your organization and give our listeners a real roundabout view of like what it is, what your mission is.
Okay. So the story is Soul Touching Experiences LLC started because I got sick of working for other people, but it really was
Smart.
um, born out of just personal experiences as a person with a disability who's Black in the United States, and stumbling into social justice work, consistently coming across issues where, if you talk about migration or immigration, nobody talks about disability. You talk about criminal justice reform, nobody talks about disability. You talk about police reform, nobody talks about it. And people go, oh, well, that's so whatever. But when you talk to the Black community, 1 out of 4 has a disability.
hmm.
You're talking to the global population, 15% of the planet are people with disabilities. So you're talking about 1.5 billion people. You're talking about the United States, that's 60 million plus. That's just those that describe themselves as having a disability. But when you step back from it, the reason it's critical is because race and ethnicity and disability is what has driven the United States. That is what chattel slavery was. That is Jim Crow. That is eugenics. That is the Brown versus Board of Education. That is the Shelby versus Holden County decision. So if you are a social justice organization and you don't take into the totality of the humanity, how are you doing your fight? How are you talking about, Black women surviving childcare when you don't even acknowledge disabled Black women having children? So it's all of those things, and really trying to bridge that gap between, if this is going to be your mission, you have to be total in your mission. It's good to have focus, but you can't skip over parts of people's humanity. So that's really the impetus for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's powerful. And the part where you just said you can't skip over people's humanity in whatever form that takes is so important. And although we don't intentionally do so, we've been very dismissive, especially in the Black community.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Hopefully
Well,
we
we
can change.
also have a
Yeah,
thing in the Black community that I admire, where we treat people, you use the word disability, so I'm going to use the word
right,
disability in this space. We, as Black families, we're like, you know what, we're going to treat JoJo just like we treat everybody else.
right.
And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not a good thing. Because there is that, there is a problem with ableism in
Mhm.
disability too, because it's one thing to be inclusive and it's one thing to overcompensate.
Yeah,
And what I can honestly say about you, Keith, is like, you you do your thing, like, nothing stops you. That I
right.
you know I don't feel like you let a lot of things get in your way. I had to make sure we had the right the time zone when I sent you the invite, because I was like, I don't keep to be in India right now, and I'm not even playing. Like, this dude be out, okay? He he's teaching hip hop in India. He's doing a conference in, California. You never know where Keith is about to be doing his work. So I love that ever since you were a kid. Because since you were small, you've been doing this advocacy. There's actually video footage of Keith. How old were you in the video that I'm talking about?
You don't know when I had a hairline.
Yes, yes, when you had
That
the
was
full.
that was 19. Yeah, one year that was 1984, 84, 84, 83. Yeah, it's and the way you talk about it, it's funny because even when you say ableism, like there's a story behind it. And so when
Mhm,
we talk about the Black community, now I'm always laughing because when they like, oh my God, your mother raised you so. I'm like, no, she wasn't raising a disabled child. She was raising a Black man in America. Those
mhm,
are two different things.
yep,
Hmm.
Yes, you happen to have a disability. So the disability label really is not for our community. It's really for the larger interfacing with the rest of society. But you're right. Everybody got the uncle in the back room. Did he get his plate? Is he good? It's like, make sure he get his shirt. You know he like his. We understand it, but what people don't talk about is that there's a cultural reason for
mhm,
that. We didn't have systems where we could quote lean on a PCA coming to the house to help you take care of your child. We didn't have departments of developmental disability or any of these rehab services because literally the laws of the United States, particularly when it comes to healthcare, were predicated upon exclusion of Black people. And if you had a disability, you literally were like not allowed to exist. So I was 5 in 1974. So don't do the math. I'm still trying to pretend I'm young. But that's when the last law on the books came off that said if you were disabled in public, they could snatch you off the streets. This is so, yes, called the ugly laws. So the last ugly law on the books were taken off in 1974. So when you talk, so the work kind of is, as we had talked before we got on, is really about if you're going to be in this space, you can, particularly in the information age, there's no excuse for stupid.
Mhm.
You can't be stupid. You
Mhm.
now you don't know what you don't know, but any effective organizer, first question you ask is who's not in the room. The second
Mhm.
question is what don't I know?
Mhm.
And so the smartest person, well, I use the adage, the smart man knows that he knows nothing, but he's smart enough to ask the question. So, but when you come to disability, particularly if you black, they go, because the story around ableism is that term did not exist until 2003, 2004.
Mhm.
And that was because the ADA had turned 10 years, roughly 10 years, 12 years old, 14, something like that. And so the ADA being framed, the Americans with Disabilities Act, being framed on the Civil Rights Act, people were trying to figure out how do we describe discrimination against people with disabilities, and hence the origination of ableism. And people, I know black folks was like, wait a minute, are you trying to say disability and racism? Wait a minute. So I think because I'm black and disabled, so I don't know, am I able to disabled? Like, so it's those kind of things that you step back and say, how can I give my community access points
Mhm.
that are relatable, that are digestible, that they can implement in terms of, my child being nonverbal or my child being autistic, but still seeing your child as your child versus a diagnosis. So that's kind of the
Mhm.
backdrop to the work.
Mhm. And there's I think there's a part of, because I raise a child that's considered disabled. I have a son who's autistic, Noah.
Yeah,
And, part of you wants to overprotect. The other part is like, how do I prepare my child for the world?
right,
Because outside of my, comfort zone, how do I prepare my child? That's kind of like the tough part about trying to strike a balance when you're raising a child, and maybe even for some educators too.
yeah. It's so the challenge has been so I've been so officially God, it's 30 years. So it's officially 30 years at this level, I guess. And so one of the challenges with is talking to parents is that, you have 9 months, you got this idea of a child, and then you give birth to this child that instantly the world is throwing things on that the child has no notice of. So I consistently tell parents, it's okay to mourn the child that you thought you were gonna have,
Mm,
but you must celebrate the child that you got.
I love
Those,
that.
so absolutely.
Yeah, I that is a beautiful sentiment. And it was a couple of months ago I watched this British TV show, and the mother had this like complete breakdown about how she had imagined having this daughter and what it was going to be having this daughter. And now she has to realize that she doesn't love her daughter any less, but she had to mourn and go through the effect. And when I tell you, I bawled at that sentiment and just hearing you say it again, because it doesn't it doesn't change your emotion, but it does have to change your thinking. And what can I do to give this person the best life that they can and meet them where they are?
Right,
So
right.
that is such a strong and beautiful sentiment. I love that.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things because I'm in a unique position that my disability is from birth, and it is very visible. Um, I don't have the ability to quote mask, let's just say.
Hmm.
Um, and again, one of the things about parents is that you are a human, so you have these dreams and these visions, and if you grow up and like I want to have kids, and my kids is going to get the hell out of my house, and then they're gonna take care of me and pay all my bills and all age, right? And then you get this child, and you're like, and really the devastation from what I've seen is not so much that the child's condition or even how the child enters the world. It's you are now hit with a flesh and blood concentration of all the ills of society
Hmm.
because you know Everything society is going to hate now is going to be focused on the child that you love so desperately. And
Mhm.
how do you shield that child? How do you give them skills and strength in a society one where the dominant culture, quote unquote, absolutely hates your existence,
Yeah.
and if you're a person of color, if particularly if you're a descendant of slavery. So
Mhm.
you have all of this. You see it like, now I got to get this Negro ready to go out in these streets and come back. How do I do this? Make sure one, I don't
Mhm.
go teach him to punch everybody in the face because
Why not?
like I mean, see,
Why not?
I'm trying to be a piece, but it's that balance, like you said, the balance because how do the reality is 7 out of 10 Black people will have violent interactions with the police or people with disabilities.
Mhm.
7 out of 10 of those who, more than half of the police they come to or unalive are people with disabilities.
More than
So
half?
more than half.
Oh.
So so the data is stark for people with disabilities in terms of ethnicity, backdrop, things like that. So in the work, you try to build those bridges with community organizations and say, hey, if you're a Latino organization, you do still have disabled people that speak Spanish, right? Like, hey, Asian community, you do still have people with disability. Like, but disability is the one thing across every demographic that will get you kicked to the curb. And and that's why in these fights, in these moments, particularly now where people are like, hands off my Medicaid. You late, too late, right? But again, even within the disability community, there is racism, ableism, sexism, classism,
Mm-hmm.
and even within the Black community, there are, we cool with disability up until it's somebody else's disability. And so that strange paradox of, we are under the oppressor. So for you to say my oppression is better than your oppression is a little weird.
Mhm.
I think it's important to start understanding how gatekeeping works and to
Yeah.
start being a person who stops keeping the gate if you have that type of power, whatever level of gatekeeping power you have. I'm trying, like, that's one of the things I'm working on myself this year is like, if I have the ability to gatekeep something, I'm trying to remind myself, stop gatekeeping, girl. Share that information. Help somebody else. Give somebody else a leg up. Stop trying to keep information to yourself. I feel like I've always been the kind of person that likes to try to connect people and try to provide resources. But, there have been times where I've gate kept information. I think one of the ways that society is dismantling that whole system is through social media. I
Yeah.
feel like I get so much great content from disabled people coming through my feed. And the more I like it, of course, the more I get. So there's a gentleman that I follow who's hearing impaired. He has some of the most amazing, funny, great social media content that I've seen on, I think it's Max or maybe Lifetime. There's Jay and Pamela. There's a couple with dwarfism that are showing that they're in a relationship together and what it's like to be in their situation. There's a young woman who's got Tourette's that's gotten popularity on her show as well, her series. So we're seeing more and can't forget Love on the Spectrum. There's a new season of that. And so there's so much information available out there that's not just, in a book somewhere. There's actual video footage, entertainment out there that's becoming more inclusive of disability. So I think that it's our job too to understand and learn. As if you're trying to be an ally, you need to go and educate yourself. How can people do that, Keith? And what makes a good ally in this space?
So how can they do it? Well, one is there's real. I try to give people real basic stuff. Is that disability has been here forever,
Mhm.
and now how you see people with disabilities is different because nobody will tell you that everybody in their house that wear glasses has a visual impairment. They just say they can't see without their glasses, right? My grandmother was like, I can't, baby, go get my eyes. And then you go get your eyes. Now she's not disabled because she's correct, or somebody who has or who is hard of hearing using a hearing aid, right? People don't necessarily, even if you're talking about people with autism or neurodivergence, all of those things are literally 20 years old. Like everything we're talking about now, the history is 15 to 20 years because developmental disabilities were what people were calling, and then they were calling it for intellectual disabilities. So the way you can be a good ally is one, check yourself. Like, are, and it's hard to be self-realized or self-aware if you know, because a lot of people who come to this out of personal connection, right? So a lot of the disability organizations were started because parents, a lot of white parents, realized that their whiteness was not going to protect their child with Down syndrome. The whiteness was not going to protect their child with cerebral palsy. The whiteness was not going to get their child into the Olympics, which is why you had all of these things. Your whiteness wasn't going to get your child a mentor or best buddies or things like that. And so the best way to be an ally, one is before you want to be an ally, ask yourself, am I here for the right reasons? Like, what is my motivation? Because
Mhm.
yes, it's really good to be passionate about one thing. It's like, I want my kids with disabilities to be in the regular classroom with these other kids, but then you still don't like black people. Right? So it's what is like. So, I want my son to be in there. Oh my God, he's trans. Right? So like it's so good allyship is knowing what your limits are,
Mhm.
knowing what your pressure points are. And but more importantly, taking the time before you engage is do some research, talk to people, actually get out and go into these things. Because I think people with disabilities go, oh my God, I don't know where you guys are. Yes, the hell you do. You just don't go. You don't want to go. You're like hell. Like so it's literally raising the veneer and just saying, okay, can I take off my rose-colored glasses and see people's variations of humanity? And
Mhm.
if I'm working for the autism community, am I inclusive of the autism community, or am I only doing the white autism community? Because there is a clear difference.
Yes.
So good allyship is studying the history of the disability rights movement, learning what disability justice is, studying the ADA. And you don't need to have like a PhD level, but you must have a clear and honest sense of yourself as to why you do this.
Hmm.
Are you aware when you are practicing the same harmful tactics? When people go, oh my God, I want to be an ally to the black people. Okay, well, what the hell does that look like?
Hmm.
Well,
Mhm.
I just want to use my white privilege. Well, what does that look like? Because white privilege is malleable. And when it comes to a cost benefit analysis, and you needing to be an ally that's going to cost you your comfort
Hmm.
versus my freedom, are you still going to be comfortable?
Mhm.
And so those are the kind of things that I tell people to think about before they want to become an ally.
I appreciate that because I don't feel like I have been. I'm not thinking. I'm not thinking. Of course, I'm always respectful of everybody, their space, their humanism. That's me. But thinking about African Americans specifically with disabilities, I think, like what you said, I'm thinking as a whole, but you know what? I'm seeing white faces more than I'm seeing black faces,
Yes.
even in my own imagination. And one of the things that just really has stuck out to me is what you said about, people with disabilities being one of the most abused by the police. How do we tackle justice reform? What are you doing? What is your organizations doing? Because that's something I didn't really think of. That's way too high. It's way too high for
Yeah.
us in general, but that's way too high for someone who has a disability and may not know what their interaction with the police are even about.
Yeah. Well, and that's so we just had 10 years for Freddie Gray.
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
People talk about him being black. They don't talk about him being disabled.
Hmm.
You just had the young man in Idaho get shot by the police
Hmm.
because he's nonverbal autistic or cerebral palsy.
Hmm.
I've been working in criminal justice reform for 26 years.
Wow.
So we have been, working with the Department of Justice on building curriculum out to what are, for disabled people on terms of recidivism. How do you, what is it like? And people tend to forget. So if I say school to prison pipeline, everybody knows, right? They go, oh,
Mhm.
but do they know that the vast majority of those kids who are being tracked off were kids who were labeled as having emotional disabilities in school, which triggered this cascading effect of, police interaction. The data. 1 out of 3 black men will have an interaction with the police by the time they're 16. I had too many. So when you stand back and say, how do we address this? It's a comprehensive thing. It's also having a coming to Jesus moment with our community. Is that we have commodified and industrialized the black movement. So we're not here for solutions. We're here for books. We're here for podcasts, TV shows, and
Wait a minute, sir.
I got one. So all right, but see, this is because when you talk about it, like you want to get different information, like
Hmm.
would come to you guys because you all are doing the work versus saying black people don't do this, black people don't do that. They used to call them poverty pimps in the 70s.
Ooh.
So the history of our movements has been once we got to a certain stage, they stop moving. They become institutionalized.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
what so you talk about criminal justice reform, then the NAACP, the Urban League, all of these criminal justice organizations should have the singular focus. We
Hmm.
understand that black men, brown men, regardless of where you are the prototype. If you understand that the roots of police are slave catchers, you understand the evolution of that. So when you talk about how to address it, you also are dealing with a lot of anti-blackness because
Mhm.
people will say, at 16, it was easy. We sitting on the Southwest Corridor, we couldn't sit 4 people deep without state police breaking us up. I
Mhm.
walked out of my door yesterday. State police are looking at me as a black man. So it's multifaceted, but partnerships are one, having real partnerships with communities that
Hmm.
are based upon pragmatic and tactical and tangible outcomes,
Hmm.
and understanding that this is having a leader in the community. People, the microphone, people get really addicted to bright lights and headlines and interviews. Oh my God, Mr. Jones, can we interview you? No, like I don't want to be in the camera. I'm trying to go home, right? But there is a celebrity that comes with being known as an activist.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like you can go back over it. People have built entire political careers on being popular activists. They have built entire entertainment careers on being activists. Right. So one of the questions I asked during the Black Lives Matter movement, which was a hashtag that had started 4 years earlier, I said, "Where's all the money going to the merchandise?" So when you see a Black Lives Matter flag, who's getting the money for that? If you see, Trans Lives Matter, where's that money going? Because
Mhm.
nobody's talking about black trans being murdered at a higher rate. So
Hmm.
if we can't talk about the totality of the movement or the outcome of the mission, it's very hard to get to the solution. So I say, so what we've done is we worked on trainings for police in the community. I sit on boards of organizations that treat that teach self-defense and safety for people with disabilities without women. So we do the real grimy under the belly work that's not sexy. That
Hmm.
is policy. That is going in rooms, talking to the state police, to the FBI, to the DOJ, who literally want. I'm sorry, I got a sick sense of humor. So I know when I roll in the room in my $145.60 Walmart wheelchair, looking all that chocolatefied, that I'm rolling in this room and I'm exactly what they did not expect.
Hmm.
And so when you talk, so for us in our community, we have to start redefining what is leadership.
Mhm.
Not is who is a leader, but what is leadership.
Hmm.
Right.
What does that effectively look like?
And I think too, the fact that you are part of the community that you advocate for is huge, because too many times there's a savior that has no idea what's actually going on, what your day to day is like just like you have the same struggles we have, but then on top of that, you have your own unique set of challenges. Like
Yeah,
you are raising children, you are trying to get work done, you're trying to be a business owner, you're trying to navigate travel and things like that. Even something like as simple as domestic travel is about to get more difficult starting May 9th. So
yeah,
people, whoever's listening to this, wherever this reaches your ears in the United States of America, even if you want to leave Boston or Rhode Island and you want to go to California, you better have that real ID.
yeah,
So
real idea.
there's a lot of stuff going on right now that is going to make things even more challenging for us than usual. But just being able to get a wheelchair at the airport, you know what I mean? Being able to, navigate your travel and things like that, being able to go online and handle transactions like updating your identification, all of these things are even more of a burden to the disabled community, because if you don't have the support system, if you don't have the computer, maybe the software that helps you hear better, that helps you see better, that helps you navigate better, everything is being digitized. So that digital divide is creating an even bigger
Yeah,
problem,
yeah.
So listen, I was in my feelings yesterday trying to do the real ID thing for a family member. And I was just like, I can't even imagine people who don't have the support, disabled or not disabled, who don't
Mhm.
have support to navigate this big change.
Yeah, it's the way you just laid it out. And one of the things, so in the work, I also do, worked with setting accessibility standards for the web, in terms of cultural standards. So I won't get into, I do a lot. Let's just say
We need
I'm in a
like
bunch
two,
of,
three more episodes to really talk about the stuff that you do.
yeah, because I was sitting there, my mother asked me, she said, "What do you do?" I was like, "Well, I do have a job, so I'm not like bro man. So I actually have a job." Uh, but like when you talking about the real ID, like I remember having those discussions. So we worked with the DOJ and we talked about the barriers to access for communities, because what is it when when people say you can go online, you understand that the communities we're talking about are digital or have the huge digital divide. We're not talking about how elderly and disabled people, how that classification, even within Medicaid, Medicare, shifts between, so the running joke with us is like, when I get 64, will I still be disabled? I'm just old. So I need to know what the classification is. So do I need my AARP now? Do I need it later? And so how do you do these things? And when you talk about travel and real ID and all of those things, that was working with TSA and the Department of Transportation. But going back to the original point, all of those processes are predicated through policy. Those policies were shaped by people who never look like us.
Mm.
And so when we're talking about who are our allies, what we have seen is that, you get into these places when you were talking about being a gatekeeper. I'm like, listen, I'm too lazy to be a gatekeeper. Damn it, here's the information. I want to go watch TV. Like, so I can't, but again, there is in the disability community, the disability rights movement is 60 years old, maybe 50, right? The ADA will be 35 years old this year. So in 1990, I turned 21. That was the first time as a black man with cerebral palsy in the United States that I had fully realized humanity with the
Mm.
passing of the ADA. So, in terms of law,
Mhm.
so how do you build allies when other communities are anti-black, right? So if you're talking about post the election, the BIPOC coalition, does that even exist? And how do I build an allyship with you when inherently in your core, everything about me you hate?
Mm.
So how do I do that substantially and not re not reincarnate your hatred, but move past it till we get to the point where we want to be. So the process of real IDs, getting a wheelchair at the airport, not even that, getting a lift from the airport. I've been sitting at the airport and they saw the wheelchair, was like, oh, we don't take people like you, and have drove off.
Mm.
So that so all of these underlying issues, and particularly now with America's mask being completely off. Well, black folks knew this. I'm just kind of chuckling. I told the world, I said, we weren't lying. We told you this is how they are. But hey,
Well, I
those
mean, didn't Governor Abbott of Texas just restrict like some ADA laws in Texas, and this man is in a wheelchair?
you mean Governor Hot Wheels? Yes, yes. And let's
Yes,
keep it a
I
buck.
do.
Let's
Oh my
I
keep
God,
it a
I
buck.
do.
love your
Exit.
post on Instagram about this.
Oh, what was it?
Oh, if you like because I'm like, if y'all gonna be mad at Hot Wheels, but not mad that he's a virulent, racist, misogynist, xenophobic, classist, narcissist. I don't. I have you are not serious about the movement. You can't.
And that was the problem. He's
Right.
restricting it because he's basing it on DEI, which is actually a racist
The
getting rid of
hypocrisy.
his racist
It's a
policy.
hypocrisy for me.
Yes, you're in
Yes.
a wheelchair, sir.
Hey, look. No. See, let me be clear.
He's a wealthy man in a wheelchair. I think that's the
Wealthy
issue.
white man.
Wealthy
He's a
white man in a wheelchair.
he's a what? And this is where the intricacies of the disability movement get really interesting. So
Hmm.
there's a so well, we ain't got 100 years. So I'm gonna make a real slip. There is the congenital, meaning from birth, and then
Hmm.
there's the acquired.
Yeah.
Those two pathways, and they're really reductive. But when you get an acquired disability, you have the before and the after in your
Hmm.
mentals. But
Mhm.
if you're congenital, there is no before and after.
Yeah.
It just always was. Greg Abbott and his entire ilk is a white man that broke his back, that
Hmm.
now uses a wheelchair.
Because he had an
That's
accident and was able to sue. That's where he got his money from. But now, as governor, he has stopped that law where you cannot sue if you get into an accident as serious as his.
Now, and again, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about allyship and partnership and
Hmm.
working together, this is when I talk about just the what's the old say? Just because of your skin folk don't make them your kinfolk,
Mm.
Hmm.
and just because of your wheelchair don't mean he gets it. Actually, he gets it more because he has the ability to never face the challenges of can I get my
Exactly.
wheelchair on a plane?
Hmm.
Will the car pick me up? Is
Mhm.
somebody going to help me relieve my pressure sores? Is some Am I going to be having to reuse catheters because Medicaid is only going to give me 24 a month? Like,
Mm.
there's like, he's never going to face that.
No.
So this is where, and just Greg Abbott reminds me, I was giving a speech in Wisconsin when Donald Trump got elected the first time. I'm in a room of 600 people, 700 people with disabilities, and half of them cheered when Donald Trump got elected. I started laughing because
I
yeah,
know
I
you
like
did. I know
I
you
was like,
did.
because I'm sitting there going, now you just voted for the man that's going to deport the person that gets your cripple behind out of bed and wipes your butt.
That
But
part.
hey, listen, again,
And that
whiteness,
was making fun of
yes,
disabled persons on the campaign trail.
on the
Mhm.
campaign trail, and this is why when people see I'm probably the worst person to talk to because I'm not.
Oh, you the best.
Because I'm like, keep that so insensitive. No, it isn't. I'm
Hmm.
like, listen, I'm dealing with facts. and
Mm.
it and it's only insensitive if you understand the intention. If the
Right.
intention is malicious, I got you. But in these scenarios, with particularly where we are now, and particularly with Texas, because not just that he's disabled, is that Texas is one of 17 states suing the federal government to get rid of Section 504. 504 governs federal accessibility, education access, IEPs, things like that. So people go, oh, they're doing all these things. I'm like, you don't understand the country you're living in. Like y'all like to start at 16, 19. That's just when they was like, oh, we are going to acknowledge that we are stealing Negroes. This is like eugenics. So if you talk about alligator bait, that was black disabled children being used to track alligators
Mm.
to be captured. If you talk about the dozens, that was disabled slaves cracking on each other to entertain the masters. If you talk about these things, this is why people don't want to. You if you don't know how you got here, you won't know where you are. So
And you
it's
can't rely on them because they're taking all of these books out of the museums, out of the library. So we need to start amassing our own private collections
yes,
of this
yes,
information. And Shahida, you're a big advocate of
yes,
teaching the kids,
yes, yes,
outside of the school and doing a Saturday program or a Sunday program or
yes.
after school and giving that historical knowledge because clearly the people who would sit and cheer for a man who is clearly not for them and this is we've seen half our country do this in the last few months too. It's like you continue to make excuses for this person because you don't really understand how we got here.
Right. Right, right. I think one of the things that is interesting for me now in this work. So we are, because I get it. People talk about, oh, I'm an activist online. I'm like, y'all don't even remember when Barack Obama got elected. That when we were using online tools in terms of like Facebook posts or Twitter posts or Instagram or Vines back in the day, right?
Oh my
Or doing
gosh.
right, they call that slacktivism because they were saying we were being lazy. What we
Mm,
were saying in the disability community is that you organizing a protest marching down Dorchester Ave or coming down going through Providence Center is nice, but that assumes that people have the ability, one, to march, two, the ability
mhm,
to get to the march, three, have the stamina to do the entire march, four, have the support network that if they have a medical condition that they can still participate. And as an organizer, I need to be completely cognizant of where do I meet my people. Like you said, you have to meet the people where they are in order to bring them to where you want them to be. And so
mhm,
when you talk about these things with, with Donald Trump and all of these people, Linda McMahon has said, my job is to dismantle the Department of Education. People forget that Brown versus Board of Education was not just about desegregation or school integration. It was also for students with disabilities to receive their and appropriate education. And
mhm,
when black people talk about this, and when you were talking about sharing this knowledge, that's what we do.
mhm,
We've done it less formally though, and I'm gonna just say I'm gonna see rich black folks talking about I'm gonna open up my academy and I'm gonna educate these kids. Yes, but you are also recreating the
mhm,
dynamic of privilege and access, because
mhm,
the kids who win the lottery have the access these other kids don't. And you are setting up the dynamic to where you are asking kids who don't have the depth to negotiate a situation where they're going to be picked on or bullied because they have access or lack of access.
mhm,
So how do we as a community not recreate the same tiered structure or the same class structure or the same ableism structure or the same, going to church on Sunday or going to mosque? Ask people, how accessible is it?
Yeah.
I,
exactly.
I roll up to the church. No, come on, brother Joe, we'll pick you up. Where's the ramp? Jesus don't make no ramps. Jesus got ramps. I know Allah got ramps. Y'all better stop
Okay.
playing with me. Buddha got
Listen.
ramps. So it's really, but for the work being intentional about making sure who's the population you're trying to outreach. What are you trying to accomplish? What are the goals after the march? How do you follow up? If you understand the digital divide, you understand the economic hardships, you understand all of these things. We
Mhm,
should not be here talking about what what is going to do now, Harpo. Well, what we going to do is black women are the most educated in the country. So I'm not worried about us setting up a standalone educational system. We have HBCUs. We have we have the entire infrastructure. What we don't have is a commitment to moving forward together. That's what we don't have.
I love that. That
Mhm.
is very true. And I hate that we have to cut this short
Yeah,
because you are on a roll and we are going to have you come back
Most
because
absolutely.
definitely.
there's still so much more that we need to talk about. And
Yes,
again, as I said from myself, I need to learn more and tap into that part because I can't call myself, I know you don't like the word activist, but I can't call myself an
right,
activist, but I definitely
right.
fight for the community.
Absolutely.
But I need to keep in touch, and we all need to keep in touch with
Yes.
all aspects of the community and going forward, we need to know what each other is doing. You need my
Yes,
help. I need to be able to call on you for help.
right.
Exactly. So can you tell us, give or let our listeners know where they can get more information about you, your website, your Instagram,
Sure.
the whole nine?
The whole nine. So if you look for sexyblackman.com, no, it's 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 Keith Jones on LinkedIn. All social media is at DASOULTOUCHA. That's at the Soul Toucher. So that's across all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, fan base, even though Revolut. Like so I'm everywhere. But you can also thesoultoucher.com is the website. So all things the Soul Toucher. But a lot of the work, one of the things that I was excited to come on and share with you guys is that we'll be rolling out one of these projects called Accessible Sports and Society.
I saw.
And it is geared towards Black and Brown youth between the ages of 14 and 22, regardless of your disability. It's kind of anchored in the South, but we're building out a digital network to hold digital town halls to do exactly what we just talked about, which is bring this information to the community, give them the resources, give them the skill sets, but also teach them about the dynamics of organizing. That you are dealing with people who some people get really addicted to having the nameplate and the name badge.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you make sure that the movement doesn't get hijacked by identity? And it's focused on giving the kids the future that they deserve, giving the seniors the ability to age gracefully where they are. So those are some of the things, but we'll be rolling that out probably in the next month. So the soultoucher.com is the website, the Soul Toucher at everything across boards. Now I will tell you, if you find me on LinkedIn, it's a little more professional. We're a little more but if you catch me on TikTok, I'm like, all right, let's check out all of y'all.
Keith is
But
getting
there's
greasy. He getting greasy on
right?
Instagram and TikTok.
But yeah, no. So in long story short, we have a movie coming out called Special Needs Revolt.
Mm-hmm.
It is insane. It is if you ever remember Toxic Avenger or Class of Nukem High or anything like that.
I do.
Yes. So we made it with those people, and let's just say for the majority of the movie, I'm running in the wheelchair with the Uzi. So it's insane, but it goes to show that when people whether it's your son, your daughter, or me or whatever, that people tend to think that the extent of our humanity is our disability versus it is part of our humanity, and who
Mhm.
we are is the totality of our human of who we are. So
That's great. Thank you so much for being here. We will definitely have all of that up on our socials as, Tracy does a great job reaching out to everybody.
right.
So you know where to find us. We are on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Little State Big Voices. We are not where, Shahida? Where can you not find
I'm
us?
sorry, we are not on motherfucking TikTok.
No, we not.
Hey, they just be like, hold on,
I know that's
We
just
definitely are not on the artist formerly known as Twitter. We definitely not there either.
oh,
oh no,
But
no.
but
blue sky.
definitely look
Yes,
for the information. I want you to follow my friend Keith at the Soul Toucher because he's out here touching souls. Keep
yes, ma'am.
you're my dude. You know that. I don't even have
Mine
to.
too. It has been a pleasure. We're going to have all of that in the description for this podcast so that you can jump on and get in contact with him and learn how to be an ally. You're going to
Yes.
join me in learning how to be an ally.
And we need to be at that premiere. Make sure we get our
Yes.
ticket.
Oh
To
no,
it.
look, y'all ain't got no choice. Y'all stuck now. We got
You gotta pull up.
uh, I'm
I'm
just,
gonna be red carpet ready. Stop playing.
oh, remember we're gonna have our black carpet event. I'm plotting on it because the last thing I'm gonna tell y'all before I get out of here, I need y'all to spread the word. My dream in my mind's eye is to have a, a spades tournament slash spades league so that we can use it as a community anchor, right? And
I
then
love it.
Good.
I'm
I
gonna have
will
to
be
learn.
there for
I gotta
that one.
learn how to play, but
Oh, oh man, we can't play no games with you if you don't know how to play. But
see, see,
get,
see,
get, get the lessons in, and then come back with us. I'm there.
I got you. I got you.
Well,
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so
thank
thank you
you
for
for
joining us because I know you are a busy person. So I'm glad you
yeah,
carved out this time with us. And like I said, I'm sure if we're not interviewing you again soon, we'll be going live with you. You're definitely coming back because there's
definitely coming back.
so much
Have a
much.
more
great
that we need to do with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.